All right, so you wanted to get Lorenzo's take on this February full moon and all the potential impacts. So we're diving into his predictions.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is how Lorenzo kind of goes beyond just the, typical astrological aspects. He weaves in, political and economic and even like technological trends to give like a broader context to his forecasts.
Right, and it's not your typical love and light astrology. I mean, he calls this full moon a global shock wave for a reason. And we've got his detailed PDF here
Oh, yeah.
covering global predictions and individual forecasts for each zodiac sign.
Right. He doesn't mess around. He jumps right in, calling this full moon a turning point.
Right.
Emphasizing its explosive energy. And he links it to these specific planetary aspects, like Mercury opposite Uranus, which he sees as driving those really shocking events.
Okay, so let's unpack those global predictions.
Okay.
He breaks them down into 4 major areas: political uprisings, economic shockwaves, technological disruptions, and natural disasters.
And he gets very specific, too, pointing to potential hotspots around the world. Like, he sees Putin facing growing dissent in Russia and warns of leadership instability in China.
And he doesn't hold back on the U.S. either, mentioning internal divisions and tech scandals bubbling to the surface.
Oh, this is where his analysis gets really fascinating.
Right.
He ties these political tensions to the potential for, like, a surprise market crash.
Oh, wow.
He talks about these unstable financial structures, pointing to Uranus and Taurus, and suggests AI-driven manipulation, linking it to Mercury in Aquarius.
He even mentions potential risks for the Federal Reserve, China's economy, and the cryptocurrency market.
Oh, yeah, it's all connected.
And as if that wasn't enough, he predicts Mother Nature's going to add to the chaos.
Exactly. He foresees a heightened risk of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and major floods. And he points to specific vulnerabilities in regions like Southeast Asia and North America.
Wow.
Even hinting at a possible energy crisis in a developed nation.
It sounds like February 2025 will be a month to remember, and not necessarily for good reasons.
That's the impression he definitely gives. And what I find particularly compelling is how he connects these global events to potential disruptions in technology and cybersecurity. He brings up Mercury and Aquarius, again emphasizing its influence on AI, cyber warfare, and communication.
So he's saying we might see cyber attacks targeting governments and corporations.
Oh, yeah.
Data leaks affecting millions, and even a major AI scandal exposing uncomfortable truths about its control over our lives.
That's what he predicts. He also mentions the potential for increased government censorship and internet blackouts.
So it's not just about market crashes and natural disasters. He's talking about a potential shift in how we access information and interact with technology.
That's right. It's like he's suggesting a digital shakeup, forcing us to reevaluate our relationship with the online world. Now, before we get into what this full moon means for you personally, based on your zodiac sign, we need to take a moment to clarify something important.
Absolutely. We're about to delve into Lorenzo's individual zodiac sign forecasts.
Yes.
And it's crucial to understand that he does not sugarcoat anything.
Nope.
He's known for his brutally honest, no-nonsense approach. So brace yourselves. This is not your typical feel-good horoscope.
He calls these his no-bullshit guidance predictions, and he gets very specific, tailoring his insights to each sign.
Right.
And he doesn't shy away from the shadow aspects of this full moon. He really pushes you to confront your patterns and make necessary changes.
So if you're ready to hear what Lorenzo has in store for you based on your zodiac sign,
Buckle up.
let's get into it. First up, we have Aries.
Lorenzo says this full moon is a breaking point for Aries, asking, will you rise or crumble?
He doesn't waste any time with pleasantries, does he?
Not at all. He emphasizes that this full moon is happening in Leo, which is ruled by the sun.
Right.
So it naturally highlights Aries' 5th house of self-expression, creativity, and passion projects.
So this full moon is really putting Aries' ego on blast. What does Lorenzo say about their relationships?
He warns about brutal awakenings regarding friendships and social circles, realizing that some people are dead weight. He even uses the term toxic to describe certain connections.
And financially.
Lorenzo predicts a potential financial crisis, especially if Aries has been reckless with money.
So what's the advice? How should Aries navigate this full moon?
Lorenzo says Aries needs to burn the dead weight, cutting off draining relationships, habits, and beliefs. He uses the imagery of a controlled burn, emphasizing the need for decisive action.
Okay, Aries, if you're listening, it sounds like this full moon is calling for some serious self-reflection and some tough choices. Now let's move on to Taurus.
For Taurus, Lorenzo says this full moon is a forced wake-up call. It's hitting their 4th house of home, roots, and emotional security.
And with Uranus in Taurus squaring this full moon, I imagine it's going to be intense.
Oh, he says it will trigger a complete identity crisis. He's warning them that if they've been clinging to like a toxic home situation, pretending that their job defines them, or lying to themselves about what truly makes them happy,
Right.
this full moon will rip the Band-Aid off.
Ouch. That doesn't sound pleasant.
No.
What's his advice for Taurus?
He tells Taurus to let go of the illusion of stability and to face the identity shift that's coming. He uses the metaphor of a snake shedding its skin, emphasizing the inevitability of this transformation.
Okay, Taurus, get ready to confront some hard truths about yourself and what you truly value. Next up is Gemini.
Lorenzo calls this full moon a truth bomb for Gemini.
Ooh.
It's happening in their third house of communication, so
Got
he
it.
emphasizes the power of words.
So honesty and authenticity are key themes for Gemini during this full moon.
Absolutely. He says they can't escape the truth. Sudden insights, shocks, or confessions will hit them unexpectedly. He even warns of potential betrayals or gossip spreading.
So, Gemini, get ready to face some uncomfortable truths about yourself and the people around you. Now let's move on to Cancer.
Lorenzo says that Cancer's self-worth is under siege with this full moon illuminating their second house of money, self-worth, and stability.
He always seems to tie those themes together for Cancer.
He does, and he warns that this full moon will expose what they're holding on to out of fear.
Like what?
He says it could be financial security, a toxic relationship, or an outdated belief about themselves. He's really pushing them to examine their deepest insecurities.
So this full moon is pushing Cancer to redefine their value.
Precisely. He tells them to drop the scarcity mindset, set financial boundaries, and stop letting others define their worth.
Great advice. Now on to Leo.
This full moon is in Leo, so it's a big one for them.
Yeah.
Lorenzo calls it the full moon that forces them to choose. Are you a leader or just loud? It's happening in their first house of self, so it's all about identity, ego, and public image.
He says Leo can't fake it anymore. What does he mean by that?
He's saying that if Leo has been playing a role instead of living authentically, the mask is coming off.
Yeah.
If their relationships have been strained because of their ego, expect a confrontation. He also warns of potential career disruptions.
What's his advice for Leo to navigate this intense full moon?
He tells Leo to drop the performance, listen to the hard truths that people might be telling them, and prepare for a career shakeup.
So Leo, if you're listening, get ready for some major self-reflection.
Yeah.
Now, let's dive into Virgo's forecast.
Lorenzo says this full moon is all about facing their demons.
Oh boy.
It's happening in their 12th house of the subconscious, so it's all about the hidden, the unconscious, the shadows.
He's not kidding around, is he?
He isn't. He says Virgo can't escape this one. They need to acknowledge their fears, self-sabotage, and illusions.
That's heavy stuff.
It is, and he's very direct with his advice. He tells Virgo to stop trying to rationalize everything, to acknowledge what's been holding them back, and to trust that what's collapsing is meant to go.
So Virgo, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed right now, just know that you're not alone. This is a time for deep introspection and healing for you. Now on to Libra.
Lorenzo says this full moon is a social test for Libra.
Okay.
It's happening in their 11th house of friendships, social circles, and future goals. So he says it's time for Libra to get real about who their people are.
He calls it a social purge.
Yes. He says Libra needs to recognize the fake relationships, face the financial truths in their social dynamics, and own their power without apologizing.
What does he mean by face the financial truths?
He's talking about any debts, hidden power dynamics, or financial ties that are making them uncomfortable.
So it's not just about friendships.
No.
It's about power and money too.
Exactly. And remember, with Uranus in their 8th house, Libra is also dealing with unexpected betrayals or power struggles.
Okay, next up is Scorpio.
This full moon is a big one for Scorpio.
Yeah.
Lorenzo says they can't ignore the power shift that's coming. It's happening in their 10th house of career, reputation, and legacy.
He says they're either rising or falling, no in between.
That's right. He says they need to own their power, clear out toxic relationships, and control the narrative.
So this full moon is really putting Scorpio in the spotlight.
Yes.
They're either going to shine or get burned.
Well, Lorenzo does say this is the moment they've been waiting for.
Time to make their move. Now on to Sagittarius.
Lorenzo calls this the truth Sagittarius can't ignore.
Oh.
He's asking, are you free or just running? He says Sagittarius is standing at a crossroads, and this full moon, happening in their ninth house of beliefs, long-term vision, and the bigger picture, will push them to face a reality check.
Hmm.
He's challenging them to ask themselves if they're truly expanding their minds or just running from reality.
What does he say Sagittarius needs to do to handle this full moon?
He tells them to face the truth, reevaluate their priorities, and own their path.
No more excuses.
Exactly. This is about Sagittarius claiming real power, not just chasing distractions.
Okay, next up is Capricorn.
Lorenzo says this full moon is forcing Capricorn to let go.
I bet they love that.
He's not pulling any punches. He says surrender or suffer.
Wow.
It's happening in their eighth house of transformation, power, and letting go.
And he's specifically highlighting their issues with power, money, and control.
Right. He's urging them to let go of financial security at the cost of personal happiness, to face their emotional depths,
Right.
and to accept that change is already happening.
Wow.
He even goes so far as to say they're either evolving or crumbling.
This sounds pretty intense for Capricorn.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But remember, eighth house energy is all about transformation, so even though it might be uncomfortable, it's ultimately for their growth. Let's move on to Aquarius.
Okay.
Lorenzo says they're in for a relationship shockwave with this full moon happening in their seventh house of partnerships and commitments.
He's really hitting all the major themes, isn't he?
He is, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He says if Aquarius has been running from intimacy, it's time to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
If they've been stuck in a one-sided dynamic, this full moon will force them to confront it.
What does he say they need to do?
He says they need to stop running from deep connections, reevaluate their closest partnerships, and embrace the changes that are coming to their home life.
What does he mean by embrace the changes that are coming to their home life?
Well, remember, Uranus is in their fourth house, so they're likely experiencing some unexpected shifts in their home or family life. It could be anything from a sudden move to a major renovation.
Okay, that makes sense. And finally, we have Pisces.
Lorenzo says this full moon is a wake-up call for Pisces that they can't ignore.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening in their sixth house of health, work, and daily habits, and he's urging them to get their life in order.
So what does he say Pisces needs to pay attention to?
He says they need to get real about their health and habits, stop ignoring their mental and emotional patterns, and reclaim their daily routine. He's calling them out for neglecting their well-being and dodging responsibilities.
And he says they need to replace distractions and bad habits with discipline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's really emphasizing the need for Pisces to take responsibility for their actions and make healthier choices.
That does sound like a tall order for Pisces. But maybe this full moon will give them the energy boost they need to make those changes.
Perhaps. It's certainly a powerful time for transformation and growth for all of us, regardless of our zodiac sign. So far, we've covered Lorenzo's global predictions and his no bullshit guidance for Aries through Pisces. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be diving deeper into his advice for each sign. Welcome back. You know, we've covered a lot of ground so far, from Lorenzo's rather dramatic global predictions to his really pointed insights for the first 6 zodiac signs.
He certainly doesn't hold back, does he? It feels like he's really pushing us to confront some uncomfortable truths, both individually and collectively.
That's Lorenzo's style, you know. He believes that true growth comes from facing reality, no matter how challenging it may be. So let's pick up where we left off and explore his deeper insights for the remaining signs. We left off with Pisces, so let's move on to Aries.
Perfect. I'm ready to hear what he has in store for the fire signs. For Aries, he calls this full moon a personal firestorm. What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, he's emphasizing the intensity of this full moon for Aries. Remember, it's happening in Leo, a fellow fire sign, and it's activating Aries' 5th house, which is all about self-expression, creativity, and passion projects. He's saying that all of these areas of life will be under intense scrutiny.
So it's not just about love and romance for Aries.
Not at all. It's about their creative endeavors, their sense of self, and how they choose to shine their light in the world. Lorenzo says that anything superficial or inauthentic will be burned away.
He uses that burning imagery a lot, doesn't he?
He does. He wants to emphasize that this full moon is a time of purification for Aries. It's about clearing out the clutter, letting go of what no longer serves them, and stepping into their true power.
So what specific areas of life does he highlight for Aries?
He specifically mentions relationships, both romantic and platonic. He says that Aries will have some brutal awakenings about who their true friends are and who has been draining their energy. He warns of potential arguments, breakups, and even betrayals.
So Aries needs to be prepared for some drama.
It's possible. But remember, Lorenzo's approach isn't about predicting doom and gloom. It's about empowerment. He's saying that Aries has the power to choose who they allow into their lives.
Okay, so what about the financial side of things? He mentioned a potential financial crisis for Aries earlier.
Yes, he warns that if Aries has been reckless with money, this full moon could bring some unpleasant consequences. He suggests reviewing their budget, curbing impulsive spending, and seeking financial advice if needed.
So it's a wake-up call for Aries to get their finances in order.
Exactly. He's not saying that everyone will experience a financial meltdown, but he's urging Aries to be mindful and responsible.
And what about those creative endeavors he mentioned?
He says that this full moon is a powerful time for Aries to tap into their creativity and express themselves authentically. But he warns against seeking validation or approval from others. It's about creating for the pure joy of it.
So it's a time for Aries to really own their creative power.
That's right. He also suggests that this is a good time for Aries to take risks and pursue their passions, even if it means stepping outside of their comfort zone.
So overall, it sounds like a pretty intense but potentially transformative full moon for Aries.
It is. He even goes so far as to say that this full moon could be a turning point in their lives, a time where they redefine who they are and what they stand for.
Okay, that's a lot for Aries to process. What about Taurus? What does Lorenzo have to say about this grounded Earth sign?
For Taurus, Lorenzo calls this full moon a forced wake-up call. He says it's going to shake up their sense of security and force them to confront some uncomfortable truths about themselves.
You mentioned earlier that it's hitting their fourth house, which is all about home and family.
Right. She's saying that this full moon could bring up issues related to their living situation, family dynamics, or their emotional foundations. He warns of potential conflicts with family members, unexpected moves, or renovations that disrupt their sense of stability.
So Taurus might be feeling a bit uprooted during this full moon.
That's possible. He's suggesting that they might need to reevaluate their living situation, set boundaries with family members, or even make some changes to their home environment.
And what about that identity crisis you mentioned?
He's saying that Taurus might be forced to confront some deep-seated beliefs about themselves that are no longer serving them. It could be related to their career, their relationships, or their overall sense of purpose.
So this full moon is pushing Taurus to dig deep and do some soul searching.
Exactly. He's encouraging them to let go of any illusions or false narratives they've been clinging to and to embrace the truth about who they are, even if it's uncomfortable.
It sounds like a lot of change and upheaval for Tauruses.
It is. But remember, change can be a good thing. It's an opportunity for growth and evolution.
Okay, let's move on to Gemini. What does Lorenzo have to say about this airy, communicative sign?
For Gemini, Lorenzo calls this full moon a truth bomb. He says it's going to expose secrets, lies, and hidden agendas.
Sounds dramatic.
It can be. Remember, this full moon is happening in their third house, which rules communication, so it's going to highlight everything related to speaking, writing, and sharing information. He's saying that the truth will come out, whether they like it or not.
So Gemini needs to be careful about what they say and do during this full moon.
They should definitely be mindful. He warns of potential misunderstandings, gossip spreading, and even betrayals. He also suggests that this full moon could bring sudden insights or revelations that change their perspective.
So it's a time for Gemini to be honest with themselves and others.
Absolutely. He's encouraging them to speak their truth, even if it's difficult. He also suggests that this is a good time to reevaluate their communication style and make sure they're being clear and concise.
What about their relationships? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring up challenges in their relationships, especially if there's been a lack of honesty or communication. He suggests having open and honest conversations with their loved ones and addressing any underlying issues.
So communication is key for Gemini during this full moon.
It is. He also suggests that this is a good time for Gemini to focus on their writing, speaking, or learning new skills.
Okay, let's move on to Cancer. What does Lorenzo have to say about this sensitive water sign?
For Cancer, Lorenzo says this full moon is all about their self-worth. It's happening in their second house, which rules money, possessions, and values.
He seems to always connect those themes for Cancer.
He does. He believes that Cancer's sense of security is closely tied to their finances and their material possessions. He's saying that this full moon will challenge them to reevaluate their relationship with money and what they truly value.
So what specific challenges does he foresee for Cancer?
He warns of potential financial setbacks, unexpected expenses, or even job loss. But he also suggests that this full moon could bring opportunities to increase their income or attract abundance into their lives.
So it's not necessarily a negative experience for Cancer.
Not at all. It's more about awareness and adjustment. He's urging them to examine their spending habits, assess their financial goals, and make any necessary changes.
Okay, that makes sense. What about their emotional well-being? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring up some deep-seated insecurities for Cancer, particularly around their self-worth. He encourages them to practice self-care, surround themselves with supportive people, and affirm their own value regardless of external circumstances.
So it's a time for Cancer to really nurture themselves.
Exactly. He also suggests that this is a good time for Cancer to connect with their intuition and explore their creative side.
Okay, let's move on to Leo. This is their full moon, so I imagine it's a pretty significant one.
It is. Lorenzo calls this full moon the one that forces them to choose. Are you a leader or just loud? It's happening in their first house of self, so it's all about their identity, their ego, and how they present themselves to the world.
So it's a time for Leo to step into their power.
Exactly. But he's also warning them against letting their ego get in the way. He's saying that if they've been putting on a show or trying to be someone they're not, this full moon will expose that.
So authenticity is key for Leo during this full moon.
Absolutely. He's encouraging them to embrace their true selves, flaws and all. He also suggests that this is a good time to focus on their personal goals and ambitions.
What about their relationships? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring challenges in their relationships if they've been domineering or inconsiderate. He encourages them to listen to their loved ones, compromise when necessary, and show their appreciation.
So it's a time for Leo to focus on balance and harmony in their relationships.
That's right. He also suggests that this is a good time for Leo to pursue creative projects, express themselves artistically, and have fun.
Okay, let's move on to Virgo. What does Lorenzo have to say about this meticulous earth sign?
For Virgo, Lorenzo calls this full moon a time for facing your demons. It's happening in their 12th house, which rules the subconscious, so it's a very introspective time.
So it's not about getting organized and cleaning their closets.
Not exactly. He's saying that this full moon will bring up any hidden fears, repressed emotions, or unresolved issues that Virgo has been avoiding. It's a time for shadow work.
That sounds intense. What kind of shadow work does he suggest?
He encourages Virgo to journal, meditate, or seek therapy if needed. It's about exploring their inner world and understanding the patterns that have been holding them back.
So it's a time for deep introspection and healing for Virgo.
Exactly. He also suggests that this full moon could bring up issues related to their past, such as childhood wounds or past traumas.
That's a lot for Virgo to process.
It is. But remember, this full moon is also about release and letting go. He's saying that by facing their shadows, Virgo can ultimately free themselves from the past and move forward with greater clarity and purpose.
What about their physical health? Does he mention anything about that?
He suggests that Virgo might be feeling more sensitive or vulnerable during this full moon. He encourages them to rest, recharge, and prioritize their well-being.
Okay, let's move on to Libra. What does Lorenzo have to say about this harmonious air sign?
For Libra, Lorenzo calls this full moon a social reckoning. It's happening in their 11th house, which rules friendships, social networks, and community involvement.
So it's all about their relationships.
It's a big part of it. He's saying that this full moon will challenge Libra to reevaluate their friendships and social connections. He warns that some relationships might reach their expiration date, while others could deepen and evolve.
So it's a time for Libra to assess who their true friends are.
Exactly. He's encouraging them to surround themselves with people who support their growth and uplift them. He also suggests that this full moon could bring opportunities to connect with new people who share their interests and values.
What about their work or career? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring about changes in their career or work environment. It could be a promotion, a new job opportunity, or even a shift in their overall career path.
So it's a time of potential growth and expansion for Libra.
It can be. He's encouraging them to be open to new possibilities and to follow their heart when it comes to their career.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move on to Scorpio. What does Lorenzo have to say about this intense water sign?
For Scorpio, Lorenzo calls this full moon a power surge. It's happening in their 10th house, which rules career, public image, and ambition.
So it's a time for Scorpio to shine in their career.
It can be. He's saying that this full moon could bring opportunities for recognition, advancement, or even a major career breakthrough.
But there's probably a catch, right?
There always is with Lorenzo. He warns that Scorpio needs to be careful not to let their ego get in the way. He's saying that if they've been ruthless or manipulative in their pursuit of success, this full moon could bring about their downfall.
So integrity is key for Scorpio during this full moon.
Absolutely. He's encouraging them to use their power wisely and to make sure their actions are aligned with their values.
Okay, what about their personal life? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring up challenges in their personal relationships if they've been neglecting their loved ones or putting their career first. He encourages them to find a balance between their personal and professional lives.
So Scorpio needs to make sure they're not burning the candle at both ends.
Exactly. He also suggests that this is a good time for Scorpio to focus on their health and well-being.
Okay, let's move on to Sagittarius. What does Lorenzo have to say about this adventurous fire sign?
For Sagittarius, Lorenzo calls this full moon a reality check. It's happening in their ninth house, which rules travel, higher education, and expanding their horizons.
So it's a time for Sagittarius to explore the world.
It can be. But he's also saying that this full moon could force them to confront some hard truths about their beliefs and their direction in life. He suggests that they might need to reevaluate their goals and make some adjustments to their course.
So it's a time for Sagittarius to get real with themselves.
Exactly. He's encouraging them to be honest about what they truly want and to make sure their actions are aligned with their values.
What about their relationships? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring up challenges in their relationships if they've been avoidant or emotionally unavailable. He encourages them to be more present and engaged with their loved ones.
So it's a time for Sagittarius to deepen their connections.
That's right. He also suggests that this is a good time for Sagittarius to pursue their spiritual interests or to explore new philosophies.
Okay, let's move on to Capricorn. What does Lorenzo have to say about this ambitious earth sign?
For Capricorn, Lorenzo calls this full moon a time to surrender. It's happening in their eighth house, which rules transformation, shared resources, and intimacy.
So it's a time for Capricorn to let go of control.
Exactly. He's saying that this full moon could bring about unexpected changes that are beyond their control. He encourages them to surrender to the flow and trust that everything is happening for their highest good.
That might be difficult for Capricorn to do.
It can be. Capricorns are known for their practicality and their need for stability, but he's saying that this full moon is an opportunity for them to embrace the unknown and to allow themselves to be transformed.
What about their finances? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring up issues related to shared finances, such as debts, investments, or inheritances. He encourages Capricorn to be responsible with their money and to avoid taking unnecessary risks.
So it's a time for Capricorn to be cautious and practical.
It is. He also suggests that this is a good time for Capricorn to explore their shadow side and to face any deep-seated fears or insecurities.
Okay, let's move on to Aquarius. What does Lorenzo have to say about this independent air sign?
For Aquarius, Lorenzo calls this full moon a relationship revolution. It's happening in their seventh house, which rules partnerships, marriage, and committed relationships.
So it's all about love and romance for Aquarius.
It can be, but he's also saying that this full moon could bring about major shifts in all of their close relationships, whether they're romantic, platonic, or professional. He suggests that some relationships might end, while others could deepen and evolve.
So it's a time for Aquarius to reevaluate their connections.
Exactly. He's encouraging them to be honest with themselves about what they need and want in a relationship. He also suggests that this full moon could bring opportunities to meet new people who are more aligned with their values.
What about their personal growth? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could trigger a period of intense self-discovery for Aquarius. They might question their beliefs, their identity, or their place in the world. He encourages them to embrace this process of transformation and to allow themselves to evolve.
So it's a time for Aquarius to step outside of their comfort zone.
It can be. He also suggests that this is a good time for Aquarius to focus on their creative pursuits or to get involved in humanitarian causes.
Okay, and finally we have Pisces. What does Lorenzo have to say about this dreamy water sign?
For Pisces, Lorenzo calls this full moon a spiritual awakening. It's happening in their sixth house, which rules health, work, and daily routines.
So it's a time for Pisces to get organized and clean their closets.
Not exactly. He's saying that this full moon will highlight Pisces' connection to their intuition and their spiritual side. He suggests that they might experience heightened sensitivity, vivid dreams, or even psychic experiences.
That sounds interesting. What kind of spiritual practices does he recommend?
He encourages Pisces to meditate, practice yoga, or spend time in nature. It's about connecting with their inner wisdom and tuning into their higher self.
What about their physical health? Does he mention anything about that?
He says that this full moon could bring up health issues for Pisces, particularly if they've been neglecting their well-being. He encourages them to rest, eat healthy foods, and avoid overindulging in alcohol or drugs.
So it's a time for Pisces to prioritize their self-care.
Exactly. He also suggests that this is a good time for Pisces to set boundaries with people who drain their energy and to focus on their own needs.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. Lorenzo certainly provides a lot to think about.
He does, but I'm curious, what stands out to you the most from all of this?
Well, for me, I think, what stands out is Lorenzo's emphasis on personal responsibility. He's not just, predicting all this doom and gloom. He's really empowering us to take control of our lives and make these conscious choices amidst all this chaos.
Yeah, he doesn't want us to just be these passive bystanders, right?
Right.
He wants us to be these active participants in our own evolution.
Exactly. And he doesn't let any of the signs off the hook. Like, even if he's highlighting challenges, there's always this underlying message of empowerment. It's like he's saying, okay, this is what's coming. Now, what are you going to do about it?
It's a good point. So the question Lorenzo kind of leaves us with is this. Are you ready to kind of face the truth, embrace change, and step into your full potential?
Yeah. Are you going to let the global shockwave knock you down, or are you going to ride that wave and, come out stronger on the other side? That's the real question.
That's a great way to put it. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive into Lorenzo's predictions for the February full moon. Thank you for joining us. And remember, even though this full moon might feel really intense, it's ultimately a catalyst for growth and transformation.
So embrace the chaos and see what unfolds.
Absolutely. Until next time, stay curious.